Hi, I'm Steve Maish, editor of Canadian Business Magazine. I'm here with Jeff Rubin. Jeff, when we speak about massively rising oil prices, we have a tendency to speak in apocalyptic terms about that sort of thing. But you were saying that you see an awful lot of upsides in this new world that you're describing. I wonder if you can tell me, what do you see as the positives in a world that's getting smaller?
Well, I think that we're going to reconnect with a lot of long-lost industries that we thought were gone forever. It's not going to make sense for Canadians to get their steel, let alone their food, from halfway around the world just because their labor's cheaper, because what we'll end up saving on labor will more than squander on bunker fuel. So I think you're going to see a revitalization of sectors of the economy that we had written off. Manufacturing, for example, farming. Now, it's true that everything that we're going to make ourselves that we used to get for some cheap labor market like China is going to cost us more money. And inflation is going to be a cost of this smaller world. But at the same time, I think our economy is going to become a lot more diversified than any of us would have dreamt in a world of cheap oil.
And it seems to me a lot of our big world-leading companies are in those very sectors.
That's right. So, I mean, as I say, it's going to be a reversal because in a world of cheap oil, it was the last bastion of domestic pricing power is the haircut or the chiropractor or the business service, because you weren't going to go to Mumbai or Beijing to do the wage arb. Yet it'll be those sectors that will actually escape the kinds of changes that triple-digit oil prices will impose on heavy goods sectors like steel.
Now, Canada also has a great deal of GDP wrapped up in basic commodities, things that are still going to be in demand. So are we relatively well protected given that?
We are, but you must realize that what is good for Canada shows how deeply we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. I mean, when the Canadian tar sands is the marginal barrel of oil, sure, that implies billions of dollars spent in the Alberta economy, a very strong Canadian dollar, but it also implies triple-digit oil prices. And think of what it means for motorists in Canada, but outside of Canada as well. So we're actually a counter indicator on the sustainability of a global economy and triple-digit oil prices. If the world's relying on Fort Mac to be 4 million barrels a day, that's the bottom of the ninth in the hydrocarbon age.
And at the same time, it seems like we're very adaptable. We've got $77 oil. A few years ago, that would have terrified us, but now it feels normal.
Right, although we're in a recession now. The problem is, when we climb out of this, where's oil going to be? Is it going to be at a level that'll send us right back into this recession? And I'm saying it can be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I believe that people respond to prices. And I believe that a global economy is not a rational way of organizing production in a world of triple-digit oil prices. Maybe 50 years hence, when we have different fuel sources that don't involve oil, it may well be. But in the here and now, the transport costs are soon going to become prohibitive.
Now, obviously, people have a tendency to very often talk about the role of speculators and that kind of thing. Dennis Butel was just talking last week that if there was no speculation in the market, strictly on supply and demand, we'd be talking about $10 oil.
But that's nonsense, because at $10 oil, there wouldn't be one barrel produced out of the Canadian tar sands. There wouldn't be one barrel produced out of deep water. Right. Look, forget about the speculators, and they've been there and they'll be back. But just think of what are the extraction costs of where we're going for supply. And it's the extraction costs that ultimately will determine the price of oil. When oil fell to $40 a barrel during the recession, they cut $50 billion of capital spending in the tar sands. Doesn't that tell you something about where the cost curve lies?
It does, for sure. I wonder where you think we're headed in terms of prices. We keep talking in terms of triple digits. Triple digits, as you mentioned, is probably only a few months away, quite possibly.
I think if the G7 gets back to where it was before the recession, we're looking at triple-digit oil prices. Then the immediate question is, are these economies any better to contend with those prices than they were 2 years ago? And it's certainly not intuitively obvious to me that they are. I think ultimately they will become, because they have to. But for us to be able to live with triple-digit oil prices, so that peak oil doesn't mean peak GDP, we're going to have to reorient much more to our domestic economy, or at least our regional neighbors.
So if someone does want to go international, they have a dream of building an international business based in Canada, what advice would you give them?
Well, understand where those markets are going to be growing. Like if you're in the auto business, for sure you want to go to India and China, because as I say, consuming oil is a zero-sum game. If 13 million people are getting on the road there, 13 million people are getting off the road somewhere else. So you don't want to be in North America. But on the same time, you know, I would look seriously at the possibility of building steel plants in North America at $150 a barrel oil, where given the weight structure, you wouldn't consider that at $30.
Jeff, thanks very much for doing this today.
My pleasure. Take care.